Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Ibrahim Traoré's era. What I am about to share with you will make your blood boil. The United States has just made a move that left even Captain Ibrahim Traoré's strongest supporters shaking their heads. After the recent terrorist strike on a Burkinabè military base, an attack that stole the lives of brave sons of the soil, the U.S. Embassy in Ouagadougou sent an official message to the presidency. The message was to invite President Ibrahim Traoré to Washington. But let us look closer. Was this really an invitation? Or was it an order dressed up as courtesy? The U.S. said they were concerned about Burkina Faso's security situation, and above all, the safety of U.S. citizens living in the country. They demanded that Traoré himself come to Washington to explain the state of the Burkina Faso security. Now I ask you people, since when do African leaders need to run across the ocean to give account of their countries? Since when do sovereign nations owe explanations to foreign powers about their internal situations? Traoré's answer was fire. He sent back one line that silenced the room. If anyone feels unsafe in Burkina Faso, they are free to leave peacefully. Boom. That one sentence carried the weight of a continent. In it, Traoré told Washington, Burkina Faso is not your child. Burkina Faso will not twist its policies to soothe your fears. Burkina Faso will not bow to your threats. And that is when things turn serious. Within days, the U.S. delegation dropped the mask. No more sugarcoating. They said plainly, if anything, and I mean anything, happens to an American in Burkina Faso, the United States will retaliate. Ladies and gentlemen, let's pause here. Do you see the shift? This is no longer about protecting their people. This is about intimidation. This is about aggression. This is the language of empire. But America made one mistake. They forgot that Burkina Faso today is not the Burkina Faso of yesterday. This is a nation under Traoré, a nation that has buried its fear and chosen to rise from its ashes. Every threat thrown at them now only fuels the fire of resistance. And the people know it. When the news broke across Ouagadougou, did they panic? Did they beg their president to accept the invitation? No. They celebrated him. They poured into the streets, waving flags, singing revolutionary songs, chanting with one voice, "We are not slaves, we will not bow." Because they understand what the West refuses to admit. Africa has changed. The days when foreign embassies could bark orders and African leaders would obey like servants are gone. With Traoré in Burkina Faso, with Goïta in Mali, with Tiani in Niger, a new chapter of defiance has begun. And let me tell you, this standoff is about much more than Burkina Faso. It is about the soul of Africa itself. If Burkina Faso bends, tomorrow Mali will bend. Next week Niger will bend. Next month Guinea will bend. And soon the whole continent will be back in chains. But if Burkina Faso stands tall, and it will, then the empire's grip begins to crumble, and Africa will know that freedom is possible. The Americans did not hide their threat. If anything happens to our citizens, we will retaliate. But what does retaliate mean in the mouth of Washington? Military strikes? Drone warfare? Sanctions? Cyber attacks? Covert operations? That single word carried the weight of an entire arsenal, and they wanted Traoré to feel it. Yet instead of trembling, the Burkinabè people felt pride. Instead of fear, they felt unity. Instead of panic, they shouted louder. At Place de la Révolution, thousands carried placards. We choose dignity over fear, and Burkina Faso is not for sale. The Burkinabè army also stood up. Officers who once served under weak regimes declared openly, our captain is right. Washington does not want dialogue. They want submission, and we will not allow our leader to walk into a trap, because the people know their history. In Libya, when Gaddafi tried to free Africa from Western chains, they promised him dialogue. But what did they give him instead? Bombs, assassination, chaos. Today Libya still bleeds. Burkina Faso knows this game too well. That's why Traoré refuses to bow. That's why the people call him the Lion of the Sahel. Because every time the empire pushes, he roars back, and the roar grows louder with every strike. This is not easy, my family. Burkina Faso is not as rich as the United States. It does not control the IMF or the World Bank. But it has something America does not, the spirit of resistance, the fire of dignity. And that is worth more than any weapon. Across Africa, people are watching. They are realizing that one small nation, if led with courage, can challenge giants. They see that Burkina Faso is no longer alone. It stands with Mali. It stands with Niger. It stands with every African who refuses to kneel. So the real question is, who should be afraid? The young captain backed by his people, his soldiers and the blessing of Africa's ancestors, or the empire stretched thin, fighting wars across the globe while its own citizens cry for justice at home. A warning has been issued. A threat has been made, but Burkina Faso has answered with dignity, and the message from the president to the last farmer in the village is the same. We are not afraid. Ladies and gentlemen, let us open our eyes wider. When America extends an invitation, it is never just an invitation. Behind the polite smiles and diplomatic handshakes lies a shadow, the shadow of control. The embassy's letter to Traoré was not simply about security. It was about power. It was about reminding Burkina Faso who they believe still holds the leash. But here is the truth. The leash has already been cut, and Traoré has no intention of crawling back. Look carefully at the timing. The so-called invitation arrived just days after Burkina Faso suffered a brutal terrorist attack. Brave soldiers, defenders of the homeland, had fallen. The nation was mourning. And instead of offering genuine solidarity, America's first move was to summon Traoré across the Atlantic like a schoolboy called to the headmaster's office. My family, let us not be naive. These terror attacks are not random. They are not isolated. They are instruments. For years, the Sahel has been flooded with weapons, armed groups and foreign-backed mercenaries. Each time Africa inches closer to independence, chaos mysteriously follows. And yet, after decades of foreign troops in the Sahel, has terrorism ended? No, it has grown. Which raises the question, who is feeding the fire? Who benefits from the instability? Who uses insecurity as a bargaining chip to keep Africa weak? Traoré knows the answer, and so do we. This is why he refuses to play their game. He will not travel to Washington to be lectured on how to govern his people. He will not bow his head and beg for protection from those who profit from instability. His message was crystal clear. We will defend ourselves. We will bury our martyrs with honor, and we will never sell our sovereignty. The US did not like that response. They dropped their masks quickly. They threatened retaliation if any American citizen was harmed in Burkina Faso. But tell me, family, who is protecting Burkinabè citizens? Who is crying for the farmers killed in their fields? For the women slaughtered in villages? For the soldiers ambushed in the deserts? Where were the crocodile tears then? That is why the Burkinabè people saw through the lies. They know this is not about protection. It is about intimidation. It is about reminding Africa, who still thinks they are in charge. But times have changed. A new generation of leaders is emerging. Goïta in Mali, Tiani in Niger, Traoré in Burkina Faso, and their answer is the same: we will not kneel. And understand this well. This resistance is not only political, it is spiritual. When Traoré speaks, he does not speak alone. He carries the voice of Sankara, Lumumba, Nkrumah, and every African giant whose blood watered the soil of freedom. He carries the prayers of mothers, the dreams of youth, and the stubborn courage of farmers who refuse to starve while their land is rich. This is why the people rally around him, because in him they see a leader unbought and unbroken, a leader who does not tremble when threatened, a leader who refuses to be treated as a puppet. The empire is confused. They are used to African leaders who rush to the airport at the snap of a finger, who smile for photo ops in foreign capitals while their nations burn at home. But this time they face something different. A young captain who would rather fall with dignity than live in chains. And that, my brothers and sisters, is the real danger to the system. Not Burkina Faso's weapons, not its economy, but its example. Because once Africans realize that they too can say no and survive, the empire's grip begins to slip. The invitation was never about dialogue. It was a test, and Traoré passed it with honor. He did not bow. He did not tremble. He stood tall, and his people stood taller behind him. This is why history will remember this moment, not as the time America invited Traoré, but as the time Traoré reminded America. Burkina Faso is free, and it will never again be your colony. Captain Ibrahim Traoré is not just resisting one letter from Washington. No, he is standing against an entire system. A system that has thrived for decades by keeping Africa weak, divided and obedient. The so-called invitation was simply the tip of the iceberg. Behind it lies the arrogance of empire. They still believe Africa belongs to them. They still think they can dictate who we trade with, who we partner with, and how we defend ourselves. They still think they can frighten us with threats of sanctions, aid cuts, or military strikes. But they are finding out that this generation is different. Traoré has shown the courage to roar like a lion, even when hyenas circle around him. Terrorist attacks in the north, economic pressure from the west, diplomatic isolation, constant threats. But instead of bowing, he stands taller. Instead of retreating, he advances. Think of this, family. After that embassy letter, the United States could have softened its tone. They could have sought partnership. Instead, they bared their teeth and warned of retaliation. Why? Because they cannot imagine Africa refusing to obey. Because to them, a free Africa is a dangerous Africa. But to us, a free Africa is the only Africa worth living in. And the people of Burkina Faso understand this deeply. They are not fooled. They see clearly that these threats are not about protecting American lives. They are about protecting American interests. Interests in gold. Interests in uranium. Interests in keeping the Sahel dependent on foreign troops forever. But Traoré has shattered that arrangement. He has expelled French forces. He has turned to partners who respect sovereignty. He has declared that Burkina Faso will build its own future. And that, my family, is why the empire trembles. Remember this. History has shown us what happens when African leaders dare to break free. When Lumumba resisted, they assassinated him. When Sankara resisted, they murdered him. Each time they sent a message to Africa: do not dare to be free. But this time the message is different. This time Traoré is not alone. He is part of an alliance with Mali, with Niger, with Guinea. Nations rising together to say, we are done being pawns. We will write our own destiny. And the youth see it. Across Africa, they chant his name. They carry his image. They share his speeches. To them, he is not just a president. He is a symbol that one of their own generation can stand against giants and not be crushed. The empire is worried not because Burkina Faso is strong morally, because when a poor nation shows courage, it exposes the cowardice of richer nations who remain silent. That is why they threaten. That is why they intimidate. That is why they call Traoré to Washington. They want to cage the lion. They want to tame his roar. But brothers and sisters, a lion does not become a sheep because hyenas demand it. Burkina Faso has made its choice: dignity over fear, sovereignty over submission, freedom over chains. And the more they threaten, the louder that choice becomes. This is why the story is bigger than one embassy letter. It is about a test of will, the will of a young captain versus the will of an empire. And for the first time in a long time, the empire is meeting an African leader who does not flinch. That, my family, is why hope is spreading across the continent. Because Africans everywhere are realizing, if Burkina Faso can defy, then so can we. Ladies and gentlemen, we must be honest. The path Traoré has chosen is not easy. It is a road filled with thorns, dangers, and enemies who smile in daylight but sharpen their knives at night. The threats from Washington are not empty. History has shown us that when Africa refuses to bow, the empire retaliates with sanctions, with sabotage, with propaganda, and when all else fails, with bombs. But Traoré has made it clear. Dignity is worth the price. He told his people plainly, "I would rather fall standing than live on my knees." And the people responded, "If you fall, we will rise. If you bleed, we will fight. If you are taken, we will continue." This is why the empire cannot break Burkina Faso, because its strength is no longer in one man but in millions. From the farmer in the fields of Kaya to the soldier at the border in Djibo, from the student in Ouagadougou to the mother in Bobo-Dioulasso, the spirit of defiance has spread. And brothers and sisters, let us not underestimate this. Weapons may destroy bodies, but they cannot kill an idea whose time has come. The idea that Africa deserves to be free. The idea that Africans have the right to govern their own affairs without foreign chains. The idea that we are not children, but a people whose ancestors built kingdoms, empires, and civilizations long before the West even knew our names. The Americans think their threats will frighten Traoré into boarding a plane to Washington. But they do not understand. This is not the Africa of yesterday. This is a new Africa, one that knows its worth. An Africa that will not crawl back into slavery because of fear. And look around. The example is spreading. Mali, Niger, Guinea, one by one, nations are refusing to be puppets. Even in countries still under the grip of foreign control, the youth are rising, chanting the same cry, "We are tired of begging, we are tired of bowing, we choose freedom." This is the revolution, brothers and sisters. It is not fought only with guns, it is fought with courage, with dignity, with truth spoken in the face of power, and Traoré has lit the torch. Now the flame is in our hands. My family, let us end with this truth. The invitation from America was never about respect. It was a test of obedience, a leash disguised as diplomacy. But Traoré tore it to pieces and reminded the world that Burkina Faso is sovereign. And the lesson is clear. Africa does not need permission to be free. Africa does not need to explain itself to anyone. Africa is not a child to be scolded, but a giant awakening from sleep. This is why the people of Burkina Faso sing his name. This is why the youth across Africa carry his image, not because he is perfect, but because he represents something larger, the return of African dignity. The empire has threatened retaliation, but the people have answered with unity, and unity, my brothers and sisters, is stronger than any bullet. So remember this, the future of Africa will not be decided in Washington, Paris, London, or Beijing. It will be decided in Ouagadougou, in Bamako, in Niamey, in Accra, in Lagos, in Nairobi, in Johannesburg. It will be decided by us, the sons and daughters of Africa. The Americans may have expected a frightened leader to run to them. Instead, they found a lion who roared back, and that roar is echoing across the continent, shaking the walls of empire, and reminding the world that Africa is awake. This is Ibrahim Traoré's era, and I leave you with these words. Freedom is never asked for, it is taken, and today Africa has begun to take it back.